Hello, and welcome to the Point Loma Democratic Club podcast. This podcast is on the politics of choice in San Diego and why Planned Parenthood matters. This podcast is made possible by the generosity of our members. Consider becoming a member by signing up on our website, pointlomadem.org. Nora Vargas spoke to the club on May the 22nd, 2016.
Anyway, so thank you very much for having me. My role is the Vice President of Community and Government Relations for Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest, and so my role is to serve as part of the larger team that's looking at the work that we're doing across the three counties. So we are in San Diego, Imperial, and Riverside counties. Our health centers are. So I wear two hats, and the part of the work that we do in our clinics is really all of the preventive work that you hear about in terms of providing birth control, cervical cancer screenings, we provide abortions. We are able to provide all the reproductive health care services that women need in this three-area region. Our Planned Parenthood is the second largest Planned Parenthood in the nation. I don't know if you know that or not. So it's kind of a big deal. And we are the only Planned Parenthood that actually has a binational program and a partnership with an organization called Pro Salud in Tijuana in Baja California. And so we work very closely with them in ensuring that services are provided, education and things of that nature. I think most of you know that abortions are not legal in Baja, and so we try to make sure we provide a lot of the preventive work for the folks in those particular regions and communities. But we serve over 271,000 patients every year in our health centers, and we provide over 66,000 lessons around healthcare education. So we really are out in the community doing a lot of really good work. And I was actually presenting yesterday to the San Diego Leadership Alliance, which is a group of young progressives that are trying, young professionals who are trying to continue to get involved in the communities. And I was saying to them that, I'm really proud of the work that Planned Parenthood does, because we actually had people that 25 years ago were visionaries and created the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. And our Action Fund is our C4. Everybody understands what that is, right? There's a C3, which is the charitable organization, and then we have our C4, which is our political arm. And that allows us to do the political work that we do in the community. And so these visionaries, 25 years, and everybody knows how Planned Parenthood got started in San Diego? It's a trick question. Yeah? No. Balboa Park, by a priest, right? Clergy. Most people don't know that. Well, yeah. It was a priest and a group of volunteers that came together and knew that there was a great need for our communities and for women to be able to, there was a need for them to have access to services and education. And so they started with education, and that's how the first clinic got started, because of that. And so we're really proud of our beginnings. And so I say that because I think it's important to mention that the work that's being done on the Action Fund, when I talk about them being visionaries, is that they knew, right, 25 years ago, that they were going to have a fight for women's reproductive health care. But nobody knew that it was going to be the kind of fight that we've been in the last couple of years. And when we talk about the war on women, we don't talk about it just lightly or because it's some, wording that people use to describe what's happening, but we talk about it because I don't know how many of you know that last year there were 48 bills introduced to restrict a women's access to reproductive health care. 48 bills in the U.S. House of Representatives. It's a lot of proactive anti-women's legislation in 2015. Take that in, right? And out of those, 19 of them were voted on to restrict women's health care, and they passed. And then, they were vetoed. But then there were 7 votes specifically created to defund Planned Parenthood. 7 votes. And so I'll talk about what that means for us. And then there was 5 committee hearings and investigations. Do you all remember the hearings that happened last year where our fearless leader, Cecile Richards, really, I think, like no one ever before, went before our committee and really stood her ground, because we have nothing to hide, and what we're doing is really providing services for women. And so we felt, and she knew, that what we were doing was the right thing. And so out of those 5 committee investigations, 4 were actually Planned Parenthood committee investigations, so specifically to Planned Parenthood. 2 of them are still going on. And then I think everybody knows that there was one particular piece of legislation to defund Planned Parenthood that President Obama vetoed, right? So people wonder, why is Planned Parenthood getting involved in elections? Why is Planned Parenthood organized? Why is Planned Parenthood trying to engage our communities? Well, for that reason, because in the end we know that the war against women and access to reproductive health care continues, and it hasn't changed. It really continues to be an attack on women's access. And so in the last year, we spent about, probably about, let's see, I think it was a total of $600,000 on political campaigns, right? And so we worked, the Action Fund fought for Congressman Scott Peters to get reelected into office, and I think he has been a champion for us at Planned Parenthood. A true advocate for women. He stood with us in Sacramento, in Washington D.C. when it was snowing, and we were trying to, bring some notice to what was happening in the Supreme Court. A couple of other members across the state. I don't know how many of you know that, there's a couple of members in really conservative areas in Riverside County and Imperial County, right? That really matter for us. And I think, the other part that I think is really interesting about the political climate that we're in right now is that it hasn't really, it continues to be sort of bad for us, right? So how do we keep going? Well, we know, I think how many of you know that we've endorsed, Planned Parenthood endorsed Hillary Clinton for president this year? We get different yays and sort of different things, depending on where I am. And that's okay, because in the end it's important for all of us to get out the vote and to participate, especially as Democrats, because we have to beat Trump in November, right? Right? We have to beat Trump in November? Yeah, all right, okay, I want to hear it loud and clear, right? For us, what we did as an organization is we really went back and we looked at the records and the history, and both candidates are 100% Planned Parenthood, no doubt about it. But we wanted to support a candidate who actually has had a record of introducing 9 pieces of legislation to advocate for women's reproductive access to health care. So for us, that meant a lot. And for us, it was important to have somebody, I love her, la piñata. For us, it was really important to ensure that when another bill comes before the next president of the United States, unequivocally, that president will veto that bill. And so we want to make sure that we haven't had really proactive legislation for women's health care in a long, long time. I mean, we've introduced bills, but nothing has really been passed. And so we are really concerned about this sort of negative reaction over and over. And then in addition to that, I think all of you know, the Supreme Court is extremely important for us, extremely important, because that's the only way we've been able to protect women's access to reproductive health care, right? And you have seen over and over what's happening in Texas, what's happening in other areas. And what I tell people is, like, sometimes we think that in California everything is great. And we do live in a beautiful sunshine state, and everything is, we have progressive members. But there are still pockets in our communities where the conservatives are very powerful. The extreme conservatives, not the conservatives who are the moderates who were, you have to remember Planned Parenthood is nonpartisan. And at one time we used to have a Republicans for Choice program at Planned Parenthood, which we were very proud of. But it's not there anymore, because there is no longer an opportunity for women to be vocal about their stands. And so for us, it's really important to find those independents and those Republicans who are pro-Planned Parenthood, to get them engaged in supporting our issues. But what happened for us in Imperial County, did anybody hear that story about Imperial County? Have you heard about it? What happened? Okay, so Imperial County is in our territory, and we had been doing education work for the last about 5 years, 6 years out there with our Promotora program, which is a program where women from the community and men are trained to do education around sexuality education prevention, and they're also taught to, reproductive health care, communication between parents and young people and their kids, and so all these great tools that they have. But what we kept hearing from them is that we need more services, there is not enough places for us to get healthcare in this region and in this area. So what happened to us was we ended up getting a donor who was amazing and said, there is a need, let's open up a Planned Parenthood in Imperial County. Well, we went through the process, we were really smart, we have people who do facilities for a living and everything else, they know what they're doing. And we got all the permits done. I think most of you may or may not know that Imperial County is, they're Democrats. The Democrats there are a little bit more conservative, right? So it's a Democratic town, but it's a little bit more conservative. About 85% of the population or so is Latino. So when it comes to Planned Parenthood, there's still a lot of misinformation. And don't anybody tell you that Latinos are not pro-Planned Parenthood, because they are. That's a myth. It's just how you talk about it and the access and the information that you give people. But long story short, the fire chief came back. The building was done. Everything was set. Fire chief comes back and says, yep, sorry, you can't open up a Planned Parenthood here because the door is not wide enough. And I'm making it very simple here, and there's actually codes that he said. You have too many beds here. You're talking about 2015. Mm-hmm. This was happening in California in 2015. So if you ever thought, does it really matter who's elected into office? They're all the same. It does matter, right? So Senator Wessel, Congressman Vargas, Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez, Assemblymember Garcia from the area, the Imperial County area, and the governor all helped us open up that center. And because of them, for the last year, we've been able to serve full service. Services are provided for women in the Imperial County. And it gives me the chills every time I talk about that story, because in the end, it's really about the power of mobilizing and organizing people. So we did a whole campaign where we were out knocking on doors, and we did focus groups, and we talked with our communities, and our communities told us, we want Planned Parenthood here because our communities need this service. I was in households where people had told me, I'm 45 years old, I was a teen mom, my daughter's a teen mom, I don't want her daughter to be a teen mom unless she chooses to be, right? I want her to be able to have access and to know more about her reproductive health care and to know what this means. And so I tell you that story because I think it's important to know that here we are, 2016, this election is so important for us in the work that we're doing. The political climate against women and against families and communities, underserved communities, continues to just percolate. And for us, it's extremely important that we engage in our communities, not only at the national and at the state level, but at the local level. So the work that we've been doing now for over 5 years, and I say that very proudly because we took a look at our partnerships with Democratic clubs, with other organizations, other progressives, and we realized that we needed to do a little bit more, right? We needed to be able to come to meetings like this and let you know, not just take you for granted and say, oh yeah, well, Planned Parenthood, Democrats, everybody supports it. No, we want to tell you what we're doing. We want to tell you what the work is that our organization is doing to advance a progressive agenda. And so it's important for us that like-minded folks understand the work that's happening every day and how important it is to protect access to reproductive health care right now. And that even though we live in California, there are some places where things are not the way they're supposed to be, where a lot of our communities still don't have access to basic health care. And so for us, one of the things that we did in partnership with the Labor Council in end of 2013, 2014, we started getting really involved with the minimum wage campaign. So Planned Parenthood is advocating on behalf of Prop I, and people wonder, what does Planned Parenthood have to do with minimum wage? Well, number one, we make sure that all of our employees are paid well, because it's important for us to have that philosophy in our organization that everybody, not because you work in a nonprofit organization, you should be able to get paid well and at market and all that good stuff. But in addition to that, it is our patients who are mostly the ones that are using our minimum wage employees. And for us, it's important that they have sick days, right? That they're able to take a sick day. Because what happens is they miss a day if they have to come to a Planned Parenthood. And some Planned Parenthoods, you have to wait a little bit longer than others. We're working on it, and we want to be better at it, and we're looking at all these different ways of how operations work so that we can do that. But sometimes, you have to come back the next day, or, things like that. And so we want to make sure that people have that right to be able to take a sick day so that they can be taken care of and take care of themselves and their families. And so we have been actively engaged in the campaign 2014, and now with Prop I, we're actively engaging our supporters and and engaging the different campaigns to ensure that that happens. We're also very active with the work that's happening with the janitors in San Diego, because we know that there's a lot happening to the women janitors who are being abused in the evenings, and so we're working with them. So it's this, what we call the reproductive justice framework, right? So that every person that we work with, every patient that we see, every class that we give and we provide an education, we really are looking at it from a lens of what are the holistic needs of that person. So you don't come in here and we just talk about birth control, or we just talk about, make sure you wait to have sex later. It's really about, how is that person doing? How are they taking care of themselves? Do they have food? Do they have access to transportation? Are our clinics in places that they need to be so that people can get the services that they need and are able to come to our clinics? And so we are not watering down what we do. We continue to be an organization that advocates for women's access to reproductive health care. We are trying really hard to work against this idea of, there's a stigma around abortion, and it's a really tough conversation for many people to have, but we shouldn't shame women for the decisions that they make, right? And so how do we make sure that we play a role like that as an organization to support women and families when they make their decisions? Can Planned Parenthood be defunded? People often ask us. If we have a president who is not supportive of women's rights, yes, it can be. Everybody remembers what happens to the global gag rule when Bush got elected? Do you remember? There was no more, he had a global gag rule, right? So we couldn't get any funding from the United States to any country internationally. So the first thing that President Obama did when he became president, the same thing that Clinton did when he became president, is they lift the global gag rule, which means that you can provide education around sex education and partnerships internationally. And so the rhetoric that you saw from other Republicans decades ago is not the same rhetoric that we're hearing now. And so we're very, very worried about what could happen if we get an extreme Republican like Trump in office. And so for us, this election means everything. Because it's not just about, it is about women's access to reproductive health care, but it's also something that is not that sexy, Title 10, right? Which is how we are able to provide community outreach, right? And it is how, we're able to get something called 340B, which allows us to get birth control at a lower cost, which means that instead of being able to buy one packet of pills, we're able to buy 2 packets of pills, which means we're able to provide more access to more people. And so the legislation that we're dealing with and we're fighting for, sex education, right? For a long time, California never took money from the federal government around sex education because they were only wanting it to be abstinence-only sex education. And we know that it doesn't work. Scientifically, it is proven that the better conversations that you have with young people, with parents engaging with their children, grandparents, depending on where how your family is created, the better decisions a young person will make, the better equipped they are to make those decisions. And so for us, it's not about Planned Parenthood surviving or, that's not what it's about. It's about really providing services for women and families and to make sure that they get the access to the education that they need. And so for us, it's really important that we get out there. This year alone, I think it was, I wanted to share with you that, people say, oh, well, okay, so you have all these legislators and, we know who the pro-Planned Parenthood folks are at the federal level and at the state level. But, how much do you really work with school boards and city councils? And for us, it's really, really actually important. And so we did something this year that we had never done before, which we actually supported and endorsed various candidates or rated candidates in the city council election for the city of San Diego. We had never really done that before. And we actually brought the candidates in and interviewed them to educate them about, why it matters, right? Why it matters in the city council is because the bubble ordinance allows us to be able to have a woman come into a clinic without being harassed by anti-Planned Parenthood, extremists. I was going to say nuts, but somebody's recording me. And it's okay.
I'm a blue Democrat.
It's okay.
You're fine.
It's okay. I will say that anywhere.
I say it too. I'm Italian.
So, but also, for us, it's the school boards, right? Dr. Shirley Weber, another amazing assemblywoman who has been a strong advocate for Planned Parenthood, in partnership with the ACLU and other progressive organizations, passed the comprehensive sex ed bill last year. And as a result, now it is mandated that if you're going to teach sex education in the schools, it has to be comprehensive sex ed. Well, we still have to fight for money, we still have to fight for a whole bunch of other stuff to make sure that it is in the framework and we can hold them accountable if they don't. But we found out that there's a lot of really good elected officials who are pro-Planned Parenthood, who are currently serving in school boards, where we can engage them, right? And sometimes you don't have to just beat people up and say, hey, you need to do this. Sometimes you just don't know. Because when people have, when you're an elected official, and the other hat that I wear for you, some of you may or may not know, is that I'm the president of the governing board for Southwestern College, which is the only community college south of the 8th. So that's my other, so I am a fellow elected Democrat. So for us, when you have a regular job and then you do these so-called part-time jobs, you have to read a lot of stuff and you're trying to get ahead. Sometimes you don't know everything, right? I mean, you don't know everything. So it's really good when an organization comes in and tells you, hey, did you know that this is the law? And this is what you should be asking, and this is what you should be doing. So one of the things that we've done is we're training all of our school board members and local city council members, water boards, and whoever's willing to listen, what they can do to ask the right questions, to make sure that our young people have access to comprehensive sex ed, so that they can know what the laws are, how to make sure that they have access. And so we really are doing a lot of the work on the ground, and it's basic grassroots organizing 101, so we can continue to build a political movement that ensures that women have access to reproductive health care. So I think there's 45, if I'm not mistaken, identified pro-Planned Parenthood elected officials, school board members and city council members as of the last election. We're doing the same thing. Usually the election's in November. So we'll do again, send out questionnaires, meet with them and talk to them, and we'll give you an updated list in November. But I do have a list of the people that we've endorsed, and I'm happy to share it with you all before I leave. But that's sort of the big picture of what's happening in Planned Parenthood. I wanted to open it up for any questions. Hopefully that is helpful for all of you, and we hope, I know that you don't want to be in another email thingy, but it would be good for you to keep informed. And every year, I think most people know, we have a big event at the beginning of the year where we raise funds to be able to continue to do our work on the C3 side. And then on the C4, on our political arm, this September 1st, we're going to be having our annual, it's called the Standout Party. And so I always tell folks that if you think it's too pricey, or but you still want to come and you're an advocate, and maybe you can give us 1 hour of phone banking between now and November, and you promise to do it, well, in good faith, we'll take it, and I'll figure out how to get you to come and join us at the Standout Party, because we need to have, the folks who are doing the work on the ground, the people who take a Sunday to come and listen to the work that we're doing, the people who are doing the grassroots organizing, to really get engaged with the work that we're doing in our organization. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I don't know if you have questions.
All right, we will. Yes, go ahead. You recognize.
Do you think you have lowered the teen pregnancy rate? Do you have figures?
Yes. So I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but there was a, is it SICA's report. That is SICA's, I can't remember how to pronounce it. So they every year they do a report about the teen birth rate, and the teen birth rate has lowered in the non-communities of color. In the African American Latino communities, it's still a little bit higher than others. However, we do have evidence that if the education is provided, then the young people will make better decisions, and the rates will go down. But for us, I think a lot of it, people say, well, what is it and why are they not getting it? But if you think about it, When resources get cut, the first thing that goes is a lot of these healthcare classes or education classes around comprehensive sex ed. So sometimes, I mean, for all of you who are teachers, sometimes, you know, they have the PE teacher giving a class on sex ed because the PE teacher really cares about their students, and that's not even their field that they're supposed to be teaching on, right? And so we work with them and we partner up with them, and I think sometimes some of the teachers are just pretty amazing and they just come and ask us for help. But for the most part, you know, a lot of the schools don't have access or, you know, resources to be providing some of this stuff. We do have a great partnership with San Diego Unified School District. We're working on trying to create one with Sweetwater Unified School District. But again, it matters who's elected in office. Because what happens sometimes is superintendents and parents may get nervous about, they think Planned Parenthood, they don't know, they think we're going to be providing abortions on the spot, something. I mean, it's just really weird what people think. And so what we do is we go in and we have a conversation with the young people, with the teachers, with the parents, and everything's age appropriate, everything is done, you know, to meet their needs, and a lot of it has to do with us being able to educate folks about what we do. So it's a long answer to your question, but yes, it does make a difference, and comprehensive sex ed works. And I'll send you the study with, yes.
I'm sorry, I was recording. We just moved here. I'm from the East Coast, so bear with me. I don't have a voice because I'm working for the campaigns, but I have a couple questions. You've been on the country, and I'm an aunt. And I'd like to hear about this because I have a lot of my sister's kids are all at that age where they would be going to Planned Parenthood. I use Planned Parenthood in Pennsylvania. Have there been cutbacks? Because I've been abroad, living abroad for 3 years in Japan. We just moved back. Have there been cutbacks in California or throughout the United States with Planned Parenthood, with funding?
For funding, yes, absolutely. And each state is very different, which is why we are so blessed to live in California. And, you know, I start off by saying there's a lot of good things that happen in California. There's some places where we still have a great need for access, depending on what the communities are, like Central Valley, like, you know, in Imperial County, certain areas have less access, right? But overall, we have seen, and why elections matter so much, is that you have these governors in certain states that are taking away access to basic reproductive health care for women, right?
Yeah.
Birth control, abortion.
If I can interrupt you, they're trying to force and say that people just go there for abortions.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's protecting yourself from disease.
Yes.
I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia, small town of 4,000 people. The big city was Scranton. And everybody, you got sex education in school. It was provided. It was part of your health class. And when you became, you know, I'm Irish Catholic, but I believe it's a woman's right to choose if she's attacked or raped, she should have the right to choose an abortion. And I'm Catholic. And I'm for, you know, a woman's right to choose. And I don't like these, and don't take any of the world and you're Republicans, and they're just brainwashing people to say that it's all about abortion, and the clinics are not about abortion. It's about protecting the right of women and checking for breast cancer. Yeah, but
So we are trying.
Reason
getting a situation where.
Yeah, it's not the main reason for why you provide that service to young women.
So I think for us, it's really important to make sure that we are having a conversation and dialogue around this issue by really reducing the stigma around abortion, right? So what I'm saying to you is, I know it is legal in the United States to have an abortion. And if that's what you choose to do, then you should be able to go into a clinic and be able to get access to that service without being harassed, without being judged, and in a confidential manner. That's who we are, it's what we do. And it's hard to say because people say, what do you mean you're proud? Well, we are very proud that we're able to provide services for women who need them. And some women choose not to go that route and continue on with pregnancies, and we're there for them too. And so for us, what's really important is that we are out in the communities letting people know that we have to make sure that we protect that right to access. And in California, you know, we have a couple of bills right now that are really great because now, you know, when women go into the ACA, their birth control was only for 3 months. So we're making sure that now it goes back to 9 months, which is what, through the FPAC, which is a state, you know, program that we have where you walk in, you get you get taken care of, and then you can walk away with 9 packs of birth control. And that matters because we have, scientifically, they realize that if you have the birth control with you for that long, the chances are that you're going to be able to continue to have a planned pregnancy based on when you decide not whether you forgot. I mean, with all due respect, you know, sometimes life gets in the way, right? Your car breaks down, you know, you realize it's the last packet of your pill or whatever, you know, there's all sorts of birth control now, but, you know, and then by the time you get to the place where you have to make an appointment, I mean, life gets hectic. People have to go to take their kids to school, work 2 jobs, it's hard. And so if you're able to have access to your basic reproductive health needs and not have to worry about it, you're going to be able to make, you're going to have better options. So, how are you, Ann?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Maybe you could clarify something. Back in 1970, President Nixon signed into law Title 10.
Yes.
And this was something that was approved pretty much unanimously
Yes.
in Congress, that low-income people could have access to birth control information and
Yes.
contraception.
Yes.
Now, why would a governor say we're going to defund Parenthood when you're adhering to Title 10?
Yeah.
What
Because
do
it's
you-
a political.
I know, but it doesn't make sense to me.
There's so many things that don't make sense to me. I can't believe that Donald Trump is our Republican candidate, but that's a whole other
I mean, do
conversation.
these
Yeah.
people think that the federal government should open up clinics and provide that care according to Title 10?
Yeah, so the thing about Title 10 is what Title 10 does is really able to provide that education, right? And so that people know and do the community outreach so that people know where the clinics are and all that. And then there's the reimbursement issue with the pills. But, you know, it's, I think most of us, you know, and I've known you for 2 decades now, right? Started off with the National Women's Political Caucus, doing some work for women and advocating for women, and you know, it just seems like we're going backwards. And I think we can either keep talking about how we're going backwards, or we can really start talking about how we're going to move forward. How do we make sure that our young people who are engaged right now understand how important reproductive health care is? Because I was born in 1971, so I just told you I'm going to be 45 in October, now you know. But, you know, I was born with access to reproductive health care, right? When I was born, even though I was born in Mexico, but, you know, I was born with that access. And a lot of young people now, and you know, and I've heard it, and I've heard all sorts of different things, but a lot of young people now, they don't know what it's like pre-Roe v. Wade. And I think we are doing ourselves a disservice when we don't have conversations about what it was like and how important it is to tell the stories and why it's so important to fight for the access too, right? Because right now, you know, with ACA, young people now have a card, you know, if they have insurance with their parents up until the age of 26, I think, you know? And so they can go to a Planned Parenthood, they can go to a clinic, and they can get access to that. That wasn't the way it was. I mean, the birth control pill has been around for 50 years. It's not a long time. And so I think history is really important for us to really know. And that part of history, sometimes it's not taught in our schools, right? Women and equity and fairness and these kinds of issues. And so, I mean, they get piled into one class on social justice, and then you just kind of like, okay. But there really is, I think that's why these gatherings are so important, and for us to talk about what's happening, because we have to figure out, and we're trying to use social media to do that work better and to really kind of figure out how we're moving forward. But for the most part, I think we are in a very challenging time. And social media can be really good for us, but it also has proven to be used by the opposition to attack us. And you know, I forgot to tell you one story that we are really concerned about. So right now, and I don't want to just leave you with all this doom and gloom, because there's a lot of good stuff happening too, but you know, and hopefully it'll get you really mad, and it'll make you like keep doing this stuff. And you know, this is why I spend my Sunday at 3 o'clock at the Democratic Party, at the Democratic Club. But so the opposition, right? Anti-choice folks, anti-Planned Parenthood actually, have a big camp that they're doing this summer for young people and for people, anybody who wants to be involved. And what they're going to do, their job is to infiltrate Planned Parenthoods. And I know that me standing here and telling you this on a Sunday at 3 o'clock, you're like, oh my gosh, she's lying, she's crazy. I'm telling you it's true, and you can actually look it up, because we have, one of the things that we do have that is really pretty amazing is our security. We have an amazing director of security at Planned Parenthood. Nationally, we've been working on this, and I think you may or may not know that last year, our websites were hacked, and there's all sorts of stuff happens that we don't really talk about because we just can't. But they're like, I say to people, there is a group of people who wake up every day in the morning, they have their coffee ready, and they're trying to figure out how to do away with Planned Parenthood. Most people who work at Kaiser and Sharp, they don't have to deal with that, right? They don't go to work every day with somebody's actually thinking about that piece. And so for us, I think we get fired up, right? Even though we have to do the shooter training, and we have to do bomb training, and we have to do, I have in my office, and I tell people, right? Not to scare people, but it's the reality I live every day. In my office, I'm one of the vice presidents, so in my office, there's a button, a button that in case anything will happen, an emergency button that I can press, so that my staff can be protected and I can be protected, anybody else who's in there. So it is the reality of where we are in this country, and that's not okay. And it's not okay because what we're doing is we're fighting for basic access to reproductive health care. That's all we're doing. And so it's a sad state where we're at, but I think it continues to get us motivated to continue to do this work because we know it's the right thing and because women need it. You had a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, Carly Fiorina.
Oh my gosh.
And what she said during the debates.
Yes.
And making it seem as if Planned Parenthood was basically abortion mills
Yeah.
for research.
Yeah.
And it was it was completely refuted what the evidence, and I guess it was from sneaking in and taking videos
Yes.
and taking conversations out of context.
Yes.
But what frustrates me is here's this woman running, okay? She's much worse than Trump. Thank God she's not, But to use that
Yes.
to really defame the organization, and frankly, there was all this attention to it, and nothing came back to, there wasn't enough attention to the fact that was completely erroneous.
Yeah, well, so I think, I don't know if you're aware that, so the Attorney General is going, the Planned Parenthood in California was the only one that was actually able to bring a case before so that we can actually prosecute David DeLillo, whatever his name is. I try not to think about him. And so we are actively trying to ensure that doesn't continue because, we actually have a piece of legislation right now that is actually in appropriations right now and it has to get through the bill. So if you want to call Lorena Gonzalez and tell her that this is a really important bill for us, please do so. But basically what it does is it protects us from people doing videotaping, like taking something out of context that I said and putting it out there. And then, what happens when you put stuff out in social media is that by the time that I get a chance to either take you to court or refute it or whatever, it's already out there. And what happens is, for some reason, everybody believes what they see on social media. I don't know why they do it. I mean, right? Because if you saw it found it on Wikipedia or Google, it happened, right? It's on the internet, so it happened. So I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people do. So we have to be very cautious and careful about that. And so for us, it's really how do we protect our doctors? How do we protect our educators and our, if we were teaching a class, an education class, and a young person wants to ask a confidential question and they want to be able to have, they don't want to have an educator who's fearing for their life or fearing that somebody's going to record them and do things for them, And so for us, it's really important that we protect that confidentiality and that ability to do our work so that we can continue to serve our patients, because that's in the end why we do what we do. The other thing I think that is happening, and I think you may or may not know, the issue of the tissue donation, I'm happy to talk about it because we are proud of the fact that women and our doctors together made decisions about being able to provide those tissue donations that in the end impact research on Alzheimer's and all sorts of other diseases that we haven't found a cure for. And so there is no profiting from it or anything like that. But by the time I have to go, and I met with all of the legislators, we had all sorts of conversations, we put it on social media, we had, think about what happens. Instead of me, in my job, focusing on how to make all of San Diego super blue so that there's all Planned Parenthood people doing this work, right? I mean, you're getting elected into office, legislators, advocates, organizing and building a movement. Well, there goes my summer. I had to do the other opposite. I had to go back and educate our legislators again. We're starting to get nervous because people were calling them and saying all sorts of stuff. There was a lot of nasty information going on around Planned Parenthood. And even our closest friends were like, whoa, what's going on, right? And with good reason. People should hold organizations accountable, and we should be able to ask questions. But so when we're always playing defense, right, it's really hard to get anything done. We still do it because we're like, we kick butt. But because we have a lot of resilience. That's who we are as Planned Parenthood employees. But in the end, and our volunteers and our donors, you know, that believe in us and are always there for us. And so it's been tough, but I think it only continues to remind us why this work is so important. Really, really, really important. So it's exciting. It's exciting to know that we are going to get, you know, a pro-Planned Parenthood president in office. I'm not going to say who just because I want to be nice. But yes.
Yeah, a couple of points and then a question. Actually, you were talking before about absence-only approach to birth control and that kind of stuff. Reminded me of the old line, what do you call people who use absence-only?
Yeah.
Parents. And you were talking about school boards, and I just want to extend an invitation to you. I know you're president of the Southwestern. Actually, I have to be president of the County Board of Education.
Yes.
And if you know anything about the children we serve, mostly they're older students, adolescents, but also the lowest income, the most vulnerable children in the community. You mentioned working with San Diego Unified. It would really be a good idea to work with the county because we service children in the homeless school, the foster youth, juvenile justice. I think that would be a really valuable step in the future.
Yeah, so we have a memorandum of understanding with the County of Education of Riverside County. We've never been able to make it happen in San Diego, so I'm glad you're here because I think we can make it happen, and we've worked together before. But what I can tell you is that my team is actually at the juvenile justice halls. They are doing work in partnership with foster youth and a lot of underserved populations. We actually were one of the few Planned Parenthoods that was granted CalPrep funding so that we could do a 3-year program in very specific areas. And we picked North County because there was a lot of need in that area, and the it's not South Central anymore, in that part of the region, so that we can make sure that we were providing services where other people were not providing services. Because we want to be good partners and we want to be able to work with other folks, and we have a lot of great folks that we work with, like San Isidro Health Center, La Maestra, the community health groups, and Vista Community Clinic. So what we do is we partner up and try to figure out where is there a need and a void, and we try to go in there. So happy to work with County of Education. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that education's not gender specific, and that Planned Parenthood has never been only for females.
Yes.
Education for Planned Parenthood has always really pushed the boys' responsibilities, the boys' involvements, the boys, and you really can't get pregnant without a boy. So, just might push that agenda that boys need to really understand that they're half the equation or part of the equation, much less the education is always a benefit.
Yes. We actually had a really innovative program, and I wish we had a lot more resources to do it, but and I'm trying to see if we can do it again because I met some of the folks who are the coaches for the soccer leagues in the South Bay, but in the Coachella Valley, we had a really awesome program for single moms. You didn't have to be a single mom. It was mostly it was focused on single moms because there was a large population of single moms in that community, but they're kids who were soccer players, and so you know a lot of these boys did not have access to male figures, and so how did they work together with coaches and when they're moms so that they can ask the right questions? I love that program. I'm trying to figure out how we implement it in other areas, and that's the other fun part of my job. I oversee all of the education work at Planned Parenthood, so it's there's the stuff that we do where we're fighting for people and we're trying to make sure on behalf of people we're trying to get legislation passed and all these other good things. But then I also get the other piece, which is the coolest part of my job, which is implementing legislation and the work that we've done, going after grants so that we can have programs like there's a program called Teen Success Program. So if there's a young woman, and we have it in 2 different schools, I think it's Lincoln, and I wish I could replicate it more, but we're trying to figure out how to do that. But basically, if you're a young woman under the age of 18, you decide to continue on with your pregnancy, you're part of this 9-month program with us so that you have access, so your world doesn't end, right? You don't have to wear a scarlet letter if you choose to continue on with your pregnancy as a young adult, so that they can continue to have a good life, that they can finish either college or vocational school, get skills that they need. We work with them so that they can plan their families moving forward. And many of them have very, backgrounds that are very interesting about how they made a decision to have a baby at a young age and all sorts of other different things. And so every story is a different story, and I think for Planned Parenthood, what we know is that we don't put things in a box. We have to make sure that we meet people where they're at, meet our communities where they're at, to make sure that we help them and are supportive of them for what they need to. So it's pretty exciting. Yes, ma'am.
Do you work with any of the refugee organizations?
Yes, so we have partnerships with a couple of the refugee organizations in City Heights in particular. We are the largest refugee, city outside of, I think for the Burmese community, the Chaldean community, there's a couple of other ones. And so we try. What we do really well there, I think, because we've tried it a couple of different ways, and what I think we do really well is that, I think I mentioned to you that we have 19 healthcare centers, right? And depending on the health center and the region, one of the programs that we've done really well is that, for instance, at the El Cajon Healthcare Center, Planned Parenthood, the manager is very well connected to the local resources in the community, and so they build partnerships so that if somebody comes in and doesn't speak the language, or our clinicians and the folks on the front line understand that if a woman from the Burmese community, for instance, comes in, she's not going to like to disrobe, and there's all sorts of different cultural factors that have to be taken into consideration. And so having that understanding of communities and culture and inclusiveness, and just being respectful about where people are when they come into our clinics, has been a really big priority for us as we continue to see very diverse populations. And so the same thing with the Chaldean community, the Somali community, and sometimes it's tough because the languages, depending on what tribe they're from, it's different. And so what we try to do is we have services that are able to be provided to those folks immediately versus them having to come back and find a translator. So we have really good partnerships with local community folks. I've tried really hard to try to create a promotora program model where people from the different refugee communities are able to work with us, but there's still a lot of stigma. It's still a lot of stigma, and there's still a lot of people not knowing what Planned Parenthood does. So I think our best, the best we can do right now, or what we can do that really honors the communities that we're working with, is to know where they are, where they're from, understand their cultures better, work with them, with their leaders, to try to see how we can provide the services that they need. And hopefully one of them will come and work for Planned Parenthood, and they can be our advocates and leaders, right? So it matters who's working inside Planned Parenthood, because we bring different lenses and different opportunities.
I've got a question. I can understand single issue people, where they're one single issue overwhelms everything else in their thinking.
Yeah.
And I know that there are the people that are anti-abortion that dominates the thinking. They'll vote accordingly, and NRA voters and whatever. But I really have a hard time understanding how we can have that many bills in Congress that are against women's fundamental health. Is it all just a single issue thing, or are there a body of people that just don't like women? I mean, I don't get it.
Neither do I. No. So I think what has happened, this is my sort of take on it. I'm not, this is just based on my political experience and the work that we've been doing. Right now, there are 5 Senate seats that are up, right? That where the Democrats may be able to take back the U.S. Senate. What the political sort of rhetoric that's taking place now is that the Republicans are mad at Trump, and they're like, they all can't play in the same sandbox because that's who they are. And so what they are doing, the Republican leadership, is putting all of their money and their resources on the 5 U.S. Senate seats that they don't want to lose, including Nevada, which is really important. If any of you can go volunteer in Nevada, that will be a really critical state for us to maintain a Democrat, right? And so what happens is the Tea Party people, they get ignited by the choice issue and women's rights to reproductive health care. I mean, all you have to do is say those words and say Planned Parenthood, and it's like they get excited. And so what they're doing is they know how to mobilize their communities. They know how to mobilize their bases. And sometimes they know that these bills won't go anywhere because Senator Boxer, and I'm gonna miss her so much, is so amazing. And she will not let stuff get through these committees, right? They introduce them, but very rarely does she let them. I mean, like I said before, in the end, I think what was it, 7 got voted on? No, yeah, 19 voted on. It was a little bit more, and sometimes they let on the House side. And so, I think that's how they mobilize their folks. They create these bills, because then they can go out and they have these meetings and they talk to people and they say, look at what I did, and I voted on this bill, and then people get fired up, right? So that's, I think, the big challenge, that they're using women to really be divisive. And when we say the war on women, we're not just making it up. It really is real. It's really real. And of course, there's a lot of really good men who are part of our movement, who have been leaders, who are donors, who are supporters, and volunteers. But in the end, and don't get me started on this, but in the end, it's about gender equity, right? If women don't have access to basic reproductive health care, they don't have access, they can't make decisions about their bodies. In turn, jobs, family, all that other stuff gets impacted. And so still patriarchal, I don't know, I'm a gender studies major, so I can go on that route really fast. I'll try not to. But anyway, I hope that answers your question. We have 5 seats that we have to beat, and they really have been, the Republicans have been really good at igniting their base with the word Planned Parenthood. That's all they have to do. And that's what they do. They are really good tactically and strategically about engaging their folks that way. So. Anyway, well, thank you so much for spending your Sunday afternoon with me. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. If you feel comfortable doing this, because I happen to know a little bit about you, would you just give us a bit of information about your life story?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, good. Okay. No.
Because I think you're interested.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I always start off that way because my family is really very important to me, and the reason why I think I'm able to stand here in front of you on a Sunday and do this kind of work. And I actually, without getting all emotional, I'll tell you that yesterday I got to see President Clinton. And I was invited. I've been working on Latinas for Hillary, so I'm just totally going to be open with you. I've been working on Latinas for Hillary for over 2 years now, nationally and locally. And so I was invited to meet him yesterday. It was kind of one of the perks that you get for being a volunteer and all that good stuff. And I got a chance to be in this VIP section. I had never done that before. And so I took a picture with him. And all I can tell him was that when I became a U.S. citizen, he was the first president. Well, before he became president, he was the first president I ever campaigned for. He was also the first president that I ever voted for. And he was also the first president I ever worked for. And so I told him that, for me, this election is really important because it really is about the American dream. How does a girl who's an immigrant get to work for the President of the United States? That only happens in the United States. And I get really emotional about it because it's a really big deal. So I grew up in a family that was very active, very political, very civically engaged, and that's what our parents really instilled in us. And education was how, it was sort of there was no question that we were going to get an education, right? It was really about, you have to study, you're going to college. There was no hey, so what do you want to do? I grew up in Tijuana. I came into the United States for high school, right? I was one of those kids in a different type in a different world of immigration, right? When I was born, you can become a resident alien, for lack of a better word, because you lived across the way, and so you had access. It was very different in 1971. I became a resident alien. I was born October 14, 1971, and on October 16, 1971, I was a resident alien, which means I had a green card that allowed me to go back and forth without a problem. Because my mom had grown up in the States, she fell in love with this Mexican, and so she moved to Tijuana, which is the other way around, right? Most people come the other way, but she went the other way. This guy was really cool. My father was amazing. And so, he really is. I'm like, I would have gone to Tijuana for him too. And I'm still looking for that guy too, by the way. No, but anyway. So my mom was really smart and a visionary, and she wanted us to have opportunities. We grew up on both sides of the border. English and Spanish was normal for us. We came across to buy milk and eggs because the products were better, and we just went back home, and it was normal. It's what we did. So all this rhetoric that you're hearing now is not something that I grew up with, because I just thought everybody did it. I didn't really understand a lot of the other issues. And so it wasn't until later that I went to college, Montgomery High School. Then I went to Southwestern College, which now I represent, so it's kind of cool that I get to be there on behalf of my students. My students. I don't have children, so I always tell them that I have 20,000 students every year that are my children, that I advocate for and I fight for. And then I ended up missing the deadline for the UC application, but I really wanted to go to Berkeley. And so I ended up applying for the University of San Francisco because I just wanted to be in San Francisco because I thought it was really cool, honestly. I mean, seriously. And I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I applied to the University of San Francisco, went to USF, and I always tell people that the Jesuits made me a feminist. Social justice, I didn't know what I cared about issues. My parents have always been very my mom passed away about 7 years ago, but they had always been like fighters and advocates, and they wanted us to, they always told us that we can do whatever we wanted, 3 women, 1 boy in our family, so it was like, what? I can do whatever I want. And so with going to school at the University of San Francisco, I think changed me, understanding really that social justice was really at the core of what really moved me and the work that I do every day. And so I was very fortunate. It was the Year of the Woman. Everybody remember that, right? That's when Senator Feinstein and Boxer, I'm old, I'm telling you, 92? Yeah. And I graduated from USF in 91. And so I was able to work on those campaigns. Nancy Pelosi had just become a member of Congress. And so I was seeing, when you live in a place like San Francisco, it was really, really cool because there was all these women and people getting involved. And then that's when 187 happened, right? And I came back to San Diego, and I worked for the only Democrat south of the 8th, west of Arizona, Congressman Bob Filner. And I worked for him for 5 years, and I always let people know that I'm proud of the work that we did together for the community, because we did really good work in the community. All the other stuff that happened, it is what it is. But I was very proud to have learned about the importance of how government really does work for people. And that's what I learned working for him, because it really was not about the politics and all the other craziness that happens in electoral politics, but it was really about constituent work, right? The person who needed to have a conversation with you and say, hey, I still haven't gotten my green card, can you help me? And we called the federal government, and just because the congressman called, something changed. Or, my social security hasn't arrived, or it was cut, and I don't have access to services. So to me, that's like what engaged me and empowered me. And then I just decided I got the political bug. I started doing political campaigns, and I fell in love with political campaigning. Moved to Washington, D.C., and that's when I worked for President Clinton in the selective service out of all places. I learned a whole other sort of love for our veterans and for people who serve our country, because I had never been exposed to it. And after that, I really missed home, so I came back home. And I've had a lot of firsts. I've been the first Latina vice president for Planned Parenthood. Oh, and when I was working for the congressman is how I got invited to be on the board of Planned Parenthood. So I've been a board member, a patient, a consultant, an educator. I mean, I've worked every hat. I'm like, once you work for Planned Parenthood, you'll work for them forever. But I became the first Latina vice president in Orange and Sereno counties, out of all places, right? Pretty conservative. And then I became the first one here in San Diego. And I'm proud to talk about it because I think that it makes a difference when organizations really open up, to ensure that the people who are at the helm really represent the communities that they're serving. And I have an amazing boss that really is very supportive. And without her, if I didn't have people ask, why don't we get more women elected into office? Because most of us have jobs and it's really hard. And trying to, men as well, but I think for most women, if you don't have a boss that supports you, it's really, really tough. And my CEO, I told her I wanted to run for office, and she said, I don't know why you want to do that, but if that's what you want to do, I'm going to be behind you 100%. And so I was appointed to the community college first, and then I ran unopposed. So my term ends in 2018. I am looking at, what the next steps are going to be for me, but for the most part, I've been very fortunate that every day I wake up and I love what I do. And And my journey has been a journey where I don't do it on my own. I have a great team of folks that I work with. And I did my master's degree at Claremont Graduate University, and I ran the first Office of Immigrant Affairs for the city of Los Angeles. I ran a statewide organization called Latino Issues Forum, which we advocated for Latinos across the state around energy, water, all sorts of other cool stuff. I've had a really, really cool journey thus far. And so I feel very blessed. And so what I do at the college, what I do at Planned Parenthood, what I do with the Latino organizations that I serve is really to try to give back and make sure that other people have the kind of opportunities that I've had. And being a Democrat, when I registered to vote, I registered to be a Democrat. They didn't have a lefty-lefty box, so I just kind of left Democrat. But it's tough to be the only, to be a progressive in San Diego. And I have to tell you, I'm going to embarrass Ann Hoiberg, because the reason why I got involved in San Diego and that I was able to get involved in San Diego was because I had been involved with the National Women's Political Caucus in San Francisco. I was very connected to the women's issues. And when I got here, I didn't have any money, and I wasn't like rich or anything. And then I think in that time I thought you had to be rich to be able to be doing some of this work. And I called Ann Hoiberg and I said, I don't have money to pay for the dinner that you're having at the NWPC. And it couldn't have been more than $50. I mean, I don't think they ever made anything too expensive. But I called her and I said, is there any chance that is there anything I could do? She says, you know what, you could come. She didn't put me at the table or anything. She said, come, join us, and then just give back to the community. So I've taken that and I give it to other people all the time. I pay it forward as much as I can. I came to that dinner and I met Denise Moreno Ducheney, who became the next assembly member in the South Bay. She sat next to me, she spoke, and I volunteered for her campaign for free for 3 months until she got her elected, and the rest is history, So I think that a person really makes a difference in a person's life when they really do and say, she wasn't asking for anything in return. She just said, just come and volunteer. And I'm like, okay, I'll volunteer. And there you go. I've been volunteering for 25 years now, something like that. So that's my journey. It's a lot, huh?
If you enjoyed this podcast, consider becoming a member. More details are available at our website, pointlomadem.org. Meetings are held regularly at the Point Loma Assembly on Talbot Street. The Point Loma Democratic Club is one of several clubs of the San Diego County Democratic Party. More details are available from sddemocrats.org.